Okay, everybody, I've worked out all the technical details, and here we go with the first art appreciation narrated lecture, which will be found on YouTube, and you will all have a link that will be posted on the Moodle site to direct you straight to this presentation. Hopefully this circumvents any software compatibility problems, and it will also give you a little bit more flexibility while watching the presentations. This first chapter is pretty brief, and it really is an overview of art throughout the ages. We have very few slides on this first presentation, but we're going to travel from 30,000 years BCE. BCE refers to the exact same time notation as BC. It just means before the Common Era. It's a little bit more politically correct. But we're going to move from that point all the way up to art made within the last decade. So the first piece we're going to look at is an iconic abstraction made by Constantine Brancusi at the beginning of the 20th century, and this is pretty spectacular because it's one of the first times that a modern artist created a completely non-objective work of three-dimensional art. Now what that means is it's not an image of anything. It doesn't look like anything. And what Constantine Brancusi was always interested in is seeking and conveying the essence of a sort of insubstantial thought. So this piece is called Bird in Space, and what he's trying to convey is the experience of flight, of speed, in a non-descriptive way, specifically. So we'll talk more about how he accomplishes this goal later on. Mostly chapters 4 and 5 will touch on that. But I think this is a pretty spectacular piece. The next piece we're going to look at is a cave painting discovered in France, and carbon dating has placed the creation time of this piece around 30,000 BCE, which is about 32,000 years ago, which is an extraordinarily long amount of time. Take a second to think about time in that incredible context. I mean, since the Renaissance, we have passed through about 600 years. So this is far longer in distant history than that. But what you'll find is that the renderings of lions on these cave walls are done with an attempt at naturalistic representation, which means that the artist was attempting to create the illusion of three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional plane, which is really very sophisticated and abstract. Now, more interesting, really though, is the purpose for these works. Now, these were not decorative pieces. They weren't found in the parts of the cave where people would normally inhabit. They were back in sort of recessed areas that would have been very dark and rarely visited, and it's thought that the artist was some type of mystic or shaman, and what they were trying to do was to exert some sort of influence over the world around them. For instance, lions would probably have been a very dangerous thing to Paleolithic human beings, and what they wanted to do was to try to capture the essence of the power of these lions, or even to propitiate the lion spirit or whatnot. There have even been cave paintings that have depicted things like volcanic eruptions or earthquakes, and the idea is that the artist was simply trying to sort of grasp some kind of control over the outside world. They're really quite mysterious. And another interesting thing is the techniques that they used. First of all, what you're seeing here is charcoal, which is basically the exact same technology that is used by artists, contemporary artists, to create charcoal drawings. It is, for all intents and purposes, a burnt stick, and one may go into Blick or Hobby Lobby and purchase similarly produced burnt sticks for rendering in charcoal. I've done it myself. I've paid $3 for the aforementioned burnt stick. So It's just really pretty amazing how that technology has really gone unchanged over time. And finally, one of my favorite things is the fact that they invented the airbrush in 30,000 BCE. They would use hollow reeds and take pigment and water into their mouths and blow through the hollow reed. They would use stencils. I mean, it's great. These people could have detailed cars. Okay, so the next slide that we're looking at is an image you guys will recognize of Stonehenge. This is a Neolithic construction on Salisbury Plain in England. It was built between 2 and 3,000 BCE. So this is about 27,000 years after the Chauvet Cave painting, and we're still in the Stone Age. It's about 4,500 to 5,000 years before right now. So it's still pretty old, but not anywhere near as old as the cave paintings. I chose a different picture from the one in your book. We may be able to relate a little bit better to this one, living at this moment in and around Omaha. What's interesting about Stonehenge, there is, again, a real sense of mystery around the site. Mostly, again, because we have no way of knowing what it was for and why it's there, why they built it. What you do find, though, is that it does serve as a pretty sophisticated calendar. It charts the equinoxes, the solstices, and some astronomers believe that it may have been used to predict things like eclipses or comets. But there's not as much evidence for that. Some of the cool things about Stonehenge are the construction, really. First of all, no stones like this are found anywhere near the site. These stones are about 50 tons each. They're called megaliths. And what the Neolithic humans would have had to do, along with maybe their domesticated animals, I don't know, is cut these things out of a quarry, drag them miles and miles and miles along the ground. Sometimes Neolithic cultures have used logs where they'll roll the stone on a log, and there'll be some people that pick up the back log and run to the front and stick it in the front and then, continue to roll in that way. But then when they get these things to the site, they have to shape them to fit with other rocks. Remember, there are no pneumatic hammers at this time. And then they have to lift the posts upright somehow and bury those in the ground. And then after that, they have to take the lintels, which are the cross pieces, lift them 15 to 20 feet in the air and set them gingerly upon the top of the posts. So this is really a kind of a technological miracle for the Neolithic period. But anyway, this is a really pretty extraordinary place and a pretty amazing thing.